Today, let's teach you how to do the one arm handstand. Now remember with the one arm handstand that it's going to take between 6 months and 5 years to achieve like a 10-second one arm handstand. Everyone's journey is completely different, but I'm confident you can learn this as long as you're dedicated to put the time in, day after day, session after session. Let's first look at what level our 2-arm handstand needs to be to start playing with the 1-arm handstand drills. Obviously, we need to be able to hold a consistent 2-arm handstand, and a really good test for that is can you kick up 10 out of 10 times and catch every time. So 1, 2, and go all the way to 10, and make sure that you are catching for 2 to 3 seconds, showing control, choosing to go back down. Can you go up again? Now that could be kick-ups, that could be jumps and everything in between, but basically you're just showing that you have a big window of balance and your catch consistency is there. Then we need to have the control to be able to move between positions. So I need to be able to go between straddle and straight comfortably. The same in tuck handstand, so be able to go from a straight position, come down to tuck, show control, and be able to go back to straight, 4 repetitions. So this is just going to really show that you've got the control, strength and balance, conditioning in those upper traps, the back, the arms, the rebalance is all there ready to go. Obviously there is degrees in the level of that. Some of you are going to be better at the tuck, some of you are going to be better at the straddle. You might be weaker in the jumps and the kick-ups, etc. But that's just all things that you can constantly refine. But I'd say you'd need to be around 80% of what I just demonstrated to really start your one-arm handstand journey. But at the end of the day, it's totally up to you. I definitely started my one-arm handstand a little bit too early. So let's try our first one-arm handstand drill. So I'm just going to open into a straddle position. So I'm going to kick up or jump up to handstand. Ideally, I'd start in straight and finish in straight every time. Open to your straddle. Make sure this is super locked in position now. We want to make sure that our straddle is acting as one segment and it's not separated at the legs. The legs are connected. If I move my left foot down, my right foot goes up. If I move my right foot down, my left foot goes up. And that's our first drill. Is I'm just going to play with tick-tocking side to side or flagging side to side, whatever you want to call it. I'm not worrying about weight shift. I'm just moving the straddle as one segment, side to side. It should naturally come lower as we go. We don't want to get away from doing anything like this sideways movement. The movement for a one-arm handstand is not this, it's this. So we want to get used to that flagging type movement in straddle. Now you are going to find when you first start this that you're going to go down more on one side than the other. One side's going to look different than the other, and probably your range of motion is going to be pretty small. Now most people will learn the one-arm handstand first in the straddle position, and the wider your splits are, the better your middle splits are, the easier the one-arm handstand is. There's no denying that. So a great time to start to work on your mobility for your middle splits is in between your sets of your one-arm handstand. So what I'd recommend you do is whenever you're resting, just go into a split position, whether it's open hip or closed hip. I'd play with a bit of both. And closed hip means I'm just leaning forwards into this more straddle position, and open hip is when I'm upright and trying to push my torso as far forwards as possible. Everyone can get much deeper in this closed hip position, and it's a good way of entering the middle splits and then trying as best you can to keep the depth when you open the hip up. So our next one-arm handstand drill is coming over to one side, so that flag type movement, and now putting a pause in. Let's see if we can hold there for 5 seconds. And I'm going to do this on both sides. I'm actually going to start with my easier side first. So I'm going to come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over to the harder side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ideally back to center, back to straight, and then come back down. Now the biggest tip with the one-arm handstand is video yourself doing that drill, and video yourself doing every drill. You want to become your own coach, so in between your sets, when you're doing your stretches, you're also looking at the video that you've just taken and at assessing what you actually done, not what you think you've done. So number one is just to look at that position that we just done. So this position here. Now, did your position look like this? Did it look like this? Did it look like this? What did it actually look like? And they're the things we need to see. So we need to start tidying up our positions. So remember, what we do on these earlier progressions, these easier levels, is going to become the base, the foundation for the harder levels that we're going to stack on top. So if our body is buckling in this position here, when I try and lift my arm up in the air, it's not going to work. I'm just going to collapse because the foundation isn't good enough. So make sure that you're self-critiquing and then trying to fix on the next set any issues you might have found. But just remember, it does take time to hit all of these drills. What I just showed you there might take you 6 months to get. So don't punish yourself, but learn from what you're doing and slowly progress to harder variation. Now we want to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to change our focus. So I'm going to come over like this, and like this. But as I go to this direction, so pull my leg down towards the right, I'm also now going to push my elbow and my shoulder in. So as my foot comes that way, I don't want to be going this way. I want to actually be pushing in this way with my elbow and shoulder. So exactly the same drill. So up into your flag position, over to one side, making sure that right elbow, see mine's coming towards the midline there. So I'm pushing this in towards that midline and it's not here. I want to make sure that's happening on both sides and start to really push that in while doing the opposite movement in terms of direction with the flag. And once we have that, we can add the next layer where instead of now I'm looking here, as I flag over, as I push this in, I'm changing my eyesight to instead of looking down in the middle there, I'm going to start to look across towards this thumb. Or if I'm a little bit more controlled, I might go between the thumb and index finger somewhere around here. So watch the peak of my hat. As I go over to the right hand side, elbow and shoulder coming in, focal point has changed, and now I'm starting to feel more weight in this right hand, this right side. Then I'll do exactly the same on the left. Straddle, flag, elbow, shoulder in, change my focal point, and back to center, back to straight, come back down. Now that doesn't look like a big change, but it's massive in terms of the challenge. And a lot of you there are going to rotate out, the top leg's going to go over, and the frustration is going to start to kick in. So I recommend you move anything that's sharp or heavy, and potentially put a punch bag in the corner, because the one arm handstand journey is very frustrating, very fun, but super, super frustrating. So on that last one, we should have started to feel a little bit of weight shift between the sides. And now we're going to embrace that a little bit more and try and deload the hand a bit more. So imagine both hands are on scales and the hand or the side we're moving towards is going to start to load more and the other one's going to start to unload. So same thing, flag across, shoulder, elbow in, change the focal point. Now this left hand is definitely getting lighter. I can feel it, so I can move it around a little bit. Same thing on this side, same things, look across. This right hand is getting a little bit lighter, and then I come back to the center again. Now we can embrace that even more by starting to play. We're going up onto fingertips now. So this hand starts to get a little bit light. I'm going to see if I can push up to here, and then I'm going to see if I can come back down again. Same thing on this side, see if I can come up to here and back down again. So the first goal is just to go through those steps, straight position, straddle, flag, elbow, shoulder in, look at the hand, come up onto fingertips, come back down again, find your position, move over to the other side, same thing, up onto fingertips for a second, back down, show control, come back to straight and come back down. Now I've done both sides on the same set back to back. In reality, when you're first playing with this, you probably need to do one side, attempt it, try and get back, come back down, rest, do the other side. But if you are more progressed, have a go at doing both sides and play around with going weaker side to stronger side to weaker side. And then remember, in those middle splits on your rest, try and keep this up, because remember, the more we get into our middle splits, the wider our straddle handstand is, the easier the one arm handstand is going to be. If I could go back and start again, that's one thing I would do, is I'd start to work my middle split much harder, much more often. And then if you're ready for the next level, exactly the same, but now we're going to hold for 5 to 10 seconds on those fingertips. So exactly the same setup, straight, straddle, flag, elbow, shoulder in, look at the hand, up onto fingertips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over to the other side, same thing, up onto fingertips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to center and straight. Now obviously do proper seconds, use a metronome if you can stand them. I'm speeding things up for the video, but it is really that time in the position that's really going to help you. Now what you're going to find when you get up to these levels, if not before this, you're going to find that one side is much, much weaker than the other side. And what I recommend you do is just do the harder progressions on the good side and the easier progressions on the not so good side, and they're probably just going to move like this. Everyone has a good and a bad side, just some people's gap is much closer, mine's quite extreme, but just don't let it stress you out. Now ideally, when we're talking about going on to fingertips now, so if we're into this position on fingertips, the goal is to get to the point where when I go into my weight shift, there's no weight in this hand, and when I go to fingertips, there's no weight in this hand, and when I go to one finger, there's still no weight in this hand. I'm just basically using this for balance. So the more contact I have, the easier the balance is. But in reality, the weight shift is actually going to change as we're learning. So to start with, I'm going to have lots of weight. I'm going to have a little bit less when I go to here. And then when I go to here, I'm going to have a little bit less. And then eventually I'm going to have less, but there's still going to be quite a bit of weight there. But just think eventually the goal is to go into that one arm handstand weight shift and have no weight in this hand now, so I could lift it up into handstand, or I could go onto fingers, or I could go onto one finger. The actual weight in this hand is not important, it's just how much contact I have for help with balance. But you probably need to have like a 10-second plus one arm handstand before you can actually do that. So let's progress to less fingers now, making sure that you're really concentrating on that side coming in, so the elbow shoulder coming in as my legs flag down to one side. What we don't want to be is here, we want to be here as much as we can, looking up to the hand, keeping this all in and not having any gap here. As soon as I've got a gap, that's a gap that's going to move around. It's not saying that that's a bad thing, that's my catch to do that when something crazy happens. But that shouldn't be my normal survival balance, that should be my balance. And I only do that when I need to. Same in a two-arm handstand. When someone's really good at a two-arm handstand, you can't see them rebalancing. So there, we don't want to be balancing like this all the time. This is what we do when we need to rebalance. We bend the arms, we move the shoulders, we move the legs around to rebalance, but we shouldn't see that when we're just in our static position. The same in the one-arm handstand. So that is the goal, to lock and pull everything into that one position, and any balance is really subtle with the elbow and the hand. So let's look at taking some fingers away now. So let's start with the thumb. So I'm going to go to straddle, flag, elbow, shoulder in, look at the hand, go up onto fingertips, see if I can remove that thumb. If that feels okay, I can reduce the fingers even more. But again, I'm trying to keep that quality of movement, that same position. Take the thumb, fingers, and then come back down, show control, come back to our straight handstand, come back down again. So I showed lots of progressions there really quickly because I can one arm handstand, I can play with that very fast and get to there. In reality, that's probably going to take 6 months, that's probably going to take 3 months, that's probably going to take 2 months, that's probably going to take 1 month. So it's probably a year for most people to get from this position to this with any sort of control. So just experiment first with just lifting that thumb up, just spending time there, come back down, swap sides if you can. And then as you progress, you'll be able to start to take more fingers away. But one of the big things that we need to start to pay attention of now is what is happening to this shoulder and elbow as we lift this hand. So watch here, if I'm in this position, if I go up onto fingertips, see what's happened to my right shoulder now compared to my left shoulder. This hand has pushed the shoulder up higher than this one. So it's done that. We actually don't want that to happen. We're in a one-arm handstand, we want our shoulders to stay on the same plane. We want that to stay level. So what we want to happen is when I go to fingertips, see I've bent the elbow now. So the elbow is getting out the way so that I don't raise this shoulder up. So I can go to there, to there, to there, and I still haven't raised this shoulder higher than this shoulder. Now another technique that you'll see is exactly the same thing. So I'm trying to keep both shoulders on the same level, but I'm actually going to take this hand out to the side. Now that means I can keep this arm dead straight and the shoulders can stay on that same plane. One of the downsides of doing this one is now the base of support is much longer and the temptation is actually to go in the middle there and move across towards this gap, especially if I've got too much weight in this finger. So I prefer most of the time to get people to do this and bend the elbow to deal with that, and then to get to the point where they can start to play with taking this hand and making it floppy. But I do occasionally use this one as well. So if you are at the fingertip level, we want to be aiming for that 5 to 10 seconds on the least amount of fingers that we can do consistently, but ride the balance on each repetition, but don't set what you're going to do in advance because you might have a crappy balance and need to have 2 fingers down even though you told yourself it was 1 finger. So only go to 1 finger when it feels right from a balance point of view, and definitely don't rush it. You're better off pausing at each of the sections, each of the points, each of the stages before rushing through them really fast. Once we've got to that magic 1 finger, so to here, we can start to play with taking the finger away. I can move the finger around. I could lift the hand for a second, come back. But basically, it's trying to get to that next stage, which is no finger, no assistance, and the actual one-arm handstand. And a good goal with this one, whichever technique you're going to use, whatever you're going to do with the fingers, try and always return back to your two-arm handstand. So if I show you on my weaker side, come across, go to fingers, go to 1 finger, come up, down, out to the side, down, and then I come back, show control, come back down. So I would count that as a successful rep because I've returned back. If I fall out, it's not necessarily a bad rep because I'm still learning from it, but I'm not showing enough control to count that constantly as repetitions, because in a way I'm teaching myself to fall. And then once you've warmed up and you're actually doing your working sets, a really simplistic way of looking at it for any level is just to hold positions for, say, a time. So if I said to you, I want you to do multiple sets with a 5-second hold, each set you just see what you can balance for. So if I go onto my left side, my weaker side, this must be a 5-second hold. So I might go there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I go onto my strong side and I know this might be my hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then come back down, hold there, show control, come back out. So that would be a successful rep. Much weaker side, done a regressed hold, but I got the 5 seconds. Strong side, done the advanced hold, got the 5 seconds. And then I just ride that balance. So as I warm the left side up, that weaker side, it needs a few sets to start to hold for 5 seconds. So that'll probably peak in the middle, and then as I start to get tired, it will go back down again. Same for the right hand side, but I know I'll be hand in, or I might even go into a harder progression from a shape point of view, but I'm still aiming to get that time under tension in the hold. The longer the time, the less sets we need to do. The shorter the time, the more sets we need to do. Now I showed all those progressions in the straddle, but you can do exactly the same thing in different shapes. So you'd still go through them same steps. But like I say, most people need to start in the straddle because that is the easiest one. You might feel that straight is easier to start with, but trust me, when you start to lift the hand, straight is much harder. I have videos, follow along classes and tutorials in my app. Link is down in the description. Reach out if you'd like coaching or if you have any questions, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Thanks.